If you want a stylish, zero-emission vehicle that loves the planet just as much as its own reflection, then you buy a Honda E, right? Well, not exactly. There's also the Fiat 500 electric and this, the Mini electric. It's the brand's first full EV, and we're here to see just how it compares with its Japanese rival, the aforementioned Honda E. But before we get into the review, remember to like and subscribe to the channel because, hey, we've got plenty more reviews like this and lots more other videos to watch as well. The Mini Electric looks pretty much like any other Mini on the outside, but there are some subtle differences between it and the versions that run on dinosaur juice. For instance, the grille has been completely blocked off and there are bright yellow highlights around the badge and wheels. There's also a Mini Electric symbol on the charging door too. Overall though, it doesn't stray too far from Mini's iconic design. Not that that's a bad thing, of course. In the Mini Electric, and before I review the quality of the cabin, I'll just say, yes, there's a mask on my face. We're actually at a BMW event today, so these cars are being used by lots of different journalists, so I'm afraid I've got to wear a mask while I'm inside the car, but hopefully you can still hear me clearly. But anyway, again, inside the Mini Electric, and it's really quite a lovely place in here. You've got a lot of leather. We've got leather around the steering wheel, got soft touch surfaces on top of the dashboard, and there's also a soft touch surface in front of the passenger. Now, this is the level 3 trim, so it's the top spec, and it comes in at about £31,000. Below that is the level 2 at 37, and below that is the level 1, which is 25,000. The differences are pretty minimal in terms of cabin quality. On the 3 you get leather seats, and we've also got a head-up display, but all models get an infotainment screen in the center of the dashboard in the Mini's typical circular design, and we also have a digital instrument cluster. The infotainment system is pretty good. It's colourful, and in some menus it's very responsive and slick. However, in some others, it can be a little bit laggy, which is obscure. I also find that some of the buttons are just a little bit small and fiddly, so if you're driving along, it might be quite hard to see exactly what you need to press. However, all cars come with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as standard, so if you're not a fan of what Mini has to offer, just plug in your smartphone and it'll take over the system. In contrast, the digital instrument cluster is nice and slick. On the left, I've got a gauge to tell me how much power I'm using. On the right, I can see how much power I've got left. And in the center, you've got a nice, simple speedo. Now, in high-level models, you also get speed limit recognition as well, which is really nifty. Storage-wise, we've got a couple of cup holders down here. We've got an armrest, which is what you don't get in a Honda E. And if you pull that up, you've got somewhere to store your phone. There's also 2 USB chargers down there, and they're regular USB, not USB-Cs. And we do have a small bin in the door, but it's not big enough to get a drink in. Now, with the batteries being in the rear, you would expect the Mini Electric to have a smaller boot, right? Well, that's not the case. You've got 211 litres to play with here, which is exactly the same as that as the regular Mini. Now, while it still seems quite small, it's actually about 40 litres more than you get on the Honda E. And while you have to store the charging cables in the back, there's a really neat compartment underneath the boot floor to keep them stowed away. Getting in the back is not exactly what you would call easy, because for some bizarre reason, the Mini Electric only comes in 3-door form, so you've got to fold the front seats down to get in. If you go for a Honda E, they're all 5 doors, and you get a little bit more space in the back of the Honda E as well. We've got the panoramic roof here, and while I've got some headroom, I think that if you were about 6 foot, then you might struggle. I'm 180 centimetres, so I'm just below. Legroom isn't too bad, but then again, I've got this seat quite far forwards, and if you've got someone that's 6 foot in front of you, you might have your legs crushed a bit. There is a small indent in the back of the seat though to make things a little bit easier. It is a 4-seater and not a 5-seater, so you don't have anybody in the middle. So while there is a small tunnel in the center of the car, you don't have to worry about it. And in fact, there's actually a cup holder here, but that doesn't mean that only one person can have a drink, because you also have a cup holder to my left and also for the passenger on the right as well. I think silence suits the Mini. It's going to be bought by a lot of people who live in urban areas, and while I know charging in an urban area is a nightmare, because I live in one, but if you're one of the fortunate few that either has a charger nearby or is able to charge off the road, then I think a Mini will suit you very well. Obviously, the first thing that strikes you is just how quiet it is. There's a very small hum that plays at lower speeds, but that is actually done through law. Electric cars have to play a certain sound at lower speeds so that you don't go and knock people over. But we're cruising here at 50 miles an hour on what is quite a bumpy road, and it is a very serene place indeed. But that's what we expect from an electric car. We expect it to be quiet. So what's the Mini E like to drive on a British road? Well, Mini gets a bit of stick for making their cars a little bit too stiff. And in all fairness, the Mini Electric is a little bit the same. We're on what is a relatively bumpy road, by far not the worst that you could expect in a rural area, and I'm finding that the car is just jiggling about a little bit. If you go over the smallest lip in the road, there's just a little bit of body movement. Obviously, this is a heavier car having batteries on board, and that seems to emphasize the car's movements. National speed limit. Let's see how quick this is. Okay. So it's got a 0 to 62 time of just over 7 seconds, but it feels just as nippy to me as the Honda E. It doesn't feel light at all, but there's a really lovely feel through the steering wheel that makes you feel like you're really in control of it, you're on top of it. While the suspension can make it feel a little bit heavy because it can be a little bit jittery on certain bumps, there is a certain stiffness that just makes it feel like, dare I say, a driver's car. I've got more feedback through the steering wheel in this car than I do on most cars, in all fairness. There's a lovely weight to it. Under the skin is a 36 kilowatt hour battery pack, and unfortunately we don't have the time today to really test the range. We'd need the car in a little bit longer if we were going to do that. But Mini claims that you'll get up to 145 miles from a single charge. That's on the level 1, but even the level 3, you're getting around 140 miles. One feature that's pretty handy though is you'll get a green circle that highlights the area that you can travel on your current range. Obviously, if you floor it, that green circle is going to get a little bit smaller. But it means that so long as you've got a decent amount of charge left, you won't be left at the side of the road. So it's good to drive and it's got a lovely interior, but it is not the most comfortable thing behind the wheel. So how does it stack up against the Honda E? Well, I think the big disappointment here is that it's only available as a 3-door. Had they done a 5-door, I think this would be a really, really close match with the Honda E. Because I think the Honda E, while is very charismatic and is really fun to drive and is punchy, it's really let down by a very, very, very small boot and also a tiny range. We've got a lot more miles to cover in this than we would do in a Honda E. But you do lose a lot of convenience in something like this. Yes, the boot is bigger and that makes it more practical. It is going to be much more difficult to get in the back, particularly if you've got, let's say, elderly relatives that you want to take on a drive. They're not going to be able to jump in the back of your Mini Electric. That being said, if you're looking for a runabout, and that's typically what Mini buyers are after, I think the Mini Electric does an excellent job. I would like the range to just be a little bit longer, but it's considerably more than what you get on a Honda E, and I think the ride could be a little bit softer. But this is definitely worth a look if you've got your eye on a Honda E.